Joy, the Sorrow's will would be the direct inverse of the boss's. So the opposite of a unified world would be a world divided. Countries would be further split up into new confederacies and insurgencies, and those would be further separated into smaller clans and tribes. Brother would be pitted against brother in never-ending civil wars as differing ideologies began to clash. Every man and woman and child on the planet would be at once soldier, civilian, and politician. All of humanity would fight to the death for what they believed in. In this world, either you pick a side or you die. The sorrow and the joy represent two sides of the same coin. They're the opposing forces of the cosmos, the yin and yang of Middle Gear mythology. When the boss went into space in the 1950s, she realized that governments and their borders were all just imaginary creations. More importantly, though, she realized they were only temporary. Think about it. In a couple thousand years, is the world map going to look anything like it does now? That's what the boss was trying to tell Snake before their final battle. There's no point in trying to change the world, even if you think it's for the benefit of mankind. The world is constantly evolving, and trying to interfere with that evolution can corrupt the next generation. This is actually the main theme of MGS2. No one can tell someone else how to think. All you can do is pass on what you think is important to those who come after you. Then they have to combine that with everything else they experience in their lives until the cycle continues. Humanity is still a relatively young species. They're still infants in the grand scheme of things. As they grow, they need to be able to learn from their mistakes at their own pace, because ideas are always rejected when they're forced down people's throats. On the other end of that spectrum is the sorrow. If the boss wanted to let the world be, the sorrow wanted for people to impose their wills onto others, so that those who lack resolve, those without the courage and the will to survive, those of weak mind and body will be burned away in the crucible of time, until tempered steel is all that remains. Sounds familiar, right?
America's disease, rotten to the core. There's no saving it. We need to pull it out by the roots. Wipe the slate clean. Burn it down! The new America will be evolved, but unchanged.
Here's the thing, though. Neither the sorrow or the joy had the right idea, because they represent two extremes. Ask anybody and they'll tell you, the key to life is balance. As the son of the sorrow and the joy, it can be said that Ocelot was that balance. He represented an equal mixture of light and darkness, and that's how he was able to realize both of his parents' dreams simultaneously. It only took him 50 years to do it. I gotta get all kinds of metaphysical for this next part, so apologies in advance for the verbal lobotomy. You'll get over it. I'll remind you of what Ocelot says towards the end of MGS2.
There's room for only one snake and one big boss.
It's pretty much a chicken or the egg scenario, but in the interest of time, let's say Metal Gear's cycle of life and death started with the sorrow and the joy. The sorrow's vision of outer heaven was to keep people divided. Through competition, natural selection would be accelerated. Because the joy was his opposite, she became the snake to sorrow's big boss. And just as the prophecy foretold, the joy ended up killing the sorrow in 1962. But check this out. In the 1950s, the joy went into space and saw a vision of a unified world. Ooh. Big mistake. That sounds a lot like an outer heaven to me, which is why it's fitting that the Joy started being known as the boss around this time. What's even more fitting is that in the same decade the Joy became the boss, she took an apprentice, who was given the codename Snake. Snake killed the boss and was given the title of Big Boss in 1964, but he didn't actually accept that title until a decade later, when he officially outlined his plans for Outer Heaven. When Big Boss finally built Outer Heaven in the early 90s, he personally trained one of his clones and gave him the codename Solid Snake. Snake didn't kill Big Boss initially, but he figuratively defeated him by putting a stop to Outer Heaven. Not once, not 3 times, but twice. Confused enough yet? Oh, but we're just getting started. Remember when I said a big boss is born whenever someone decides to create Outer Heaven? Well, guess what? The Patriots was an entire organization dedicated to realizing the boss's vision of Outer Heaven, meaning every single founding member assumed the role of Big Boss, and that means each of the Patriots created their own snakes who were destined to defeat them. What? Paramedic cloned Big Boss and began the research that led to the Genome Soldiers. After turning Gray Fox into a cyborg ninja, Dr. Clark was killed by her own Frankenstein's monster when Naomi Hunter set her brother free. Donald Anderson created Zero's AI-controlled information network. He was killed when Liquid Snake told Ocelot to torture him for information. It's true that Ocelot killed the DARPA chief on purpose, but he never would have had the opportunity unless Liquid had given the order. Eva left the Patriots soon after the twin snakes were born to help Big Boss form his version of Outer Heaven. Because of that, she wound up being killed by a strain of fox dye that was injected into the snake that she literally gave birth to. By no coincidence, Big Boss was killed the same way. Major Zero? Do I even need to explain this one? As you can see, snakes are the life that forms from the death of the Big Boss who created them. And those snakes will grow into bosses, a force that facilitates change in the world. In Metal Gear, this cycle of life and death propels humanity forward. The constant fluctuation between positive and negative energy states acts as an engine that accelerates humanity towards becoming a stronger species over time. This is the fundamental theorem of Outer Heaven, the unifying theory of Metal Gear. Life becomes death, so that death may create new life. Ocelot fully understood the inner workings of the Outer Heaven engine, and he planned everything knowing exactly how things had to end for him. Incidentally, he also discovered a major loophole in the engine that allowed him to avoid falling prey to it until the last possible moment. And it's kind of brilliant. Here's what he did. Right up until he went solo at the end of MGS2, Ocelot was forever the right-hand man of the person in charge. By constantly manipulating others into doing his dirty work for him, Ocelot was technically never in a position to become a boss. Even though Ocelot did eventually perfect the Outer Heaven engine, even he wasn't immune to its effects. When he decided to stage his insurrection, he became a boss and was therefore destined to be killed by the snake he created. But because he was aware of that, he was able to prepare for it and arrange exactly when he died and what would kill him. But it wasn't Solid Snake who was destined to defeat him. Ocelot was killed by the Fox Eye virus, not Snake getting medieval on his ass. The new Fox Eye virus was a creation of the Patriots' AI system, which was put into place by the DARPA chief after Zero was turned into a vegetable by Skullface. Since Ocelot was the one who set all that into motion, when he became a boss, the snake that was destined to defeat him wasn't any one person. It was the state of affairs in the world he had given rise to. Ocelot entrusted Snake with the boss's will, and he manipulated every aspect of Snake's existence, right down to his DNA, so that Snake would be the ultimate successor to his mother's legacy. That's why when Snake and Otacon formed Philanthropy after MGS1, their motto was literally the boss's will, to let the world be. But when Ocelot perfected the cycle, he also altered the concepts of life and death that had been going on since the dawn of human history. Snake's DNA was altered so that his aging would be accelerated, so he was only expected to live for another year after the events of MGS4. Ocelot planned this so that it was impossible for Snake to become a boss. Snake would die of somewhat natural causes, thus preventing him from being killed by a snake of his own creation. This completely disobeyed the laws of Outer Heaven and broke the cycle. But Ocelot knew exactly what he was doing, which is why he put a new cycle into place after he died. What he did was, he spread the blueprints of the Outer Heaven engine throughout the world like a virus. This was Ocelot's version of Fox Die, the opposite of Fox Alive. Essentially, he created a global pandemic by infecting people with a meme that targeted people's hearts and minds.
What she created was an anti-AI Fox Die. But this virus's name is Fox Alive. It's the conceptual opposite of the nanomachines that I created all those years ago.
Instead of snakes growing into bosses like they did in the past, snakes would now pass their philosophies on to the next generation. Solid Snake, for example, influenced by the last words of his best friend, encouraged people to fight for what they believed in instead of being used as tools of their governments. This is also an important aspect of the boss's will and the life side of the Outer Heaven engine. The boss wanted her apprentice to accept himself and others for who they are, not how he thought they should be. Big Boss didn't quite get it, but Ocelot made sure Snake got the message. Because when you truly accept who you are and learn to exist in the world without trying to radically alter it, that's when you achieve Inner Heaven. Outer Heaven began during the lifespan of the Sorrow, but Inner Heaven began with the death of Solid Snake. Before he died, Snake was able to spread the message of Inner Heaven to everybody he came into contact with after MGS1. He formed Philanthropy with Otacon, who Mei Ling was also a member of. Before that, there was Meryl, who passed Inner Heaven on to her husband, Johnny Sasaki. And of course, let's not forget about Raiden.
I'll pick my own name and my own life. I'll find something.
At the same time Snake was spreading the Inner Heaven virus, Ocelot was spreading the Sorrow's ideology to future generations. That's why 4 years after Ocelot's death, Senator Armstrong was able to perfectly describe the Sorrows in Outer Heaven. He did this despite having no direct contact with the Sorrow or Ocelot. But the philosophy lived on because Ocelot put that energy out into the universe. At the end of Metal Gear Rising, Armstrong was defeated by Raiden, who was originally given the codename Snake after being trained by Solidus, the perfect clone of Big Boss, who Raiden also killed. Jack the Ripper normally would have been destined to become the next Big Boss, but because Ocelot changed the Outer Heaven engine, Raiden was able to pass the gift of life on to the next generation, Sonny, George, and his son, Little John. And you know what? You might as well throw Blade Wolf in there while you're at it. So thanks to Ocelot's actions over the course of 50 years, the Outer Heaven engine was Chris ever honored as it had since the beginning of Forever, although in a different form compared to what it originally was. After the final battle with MGS4, Ocelot described the world as constant warfare where human evolution is accelerated through forced natural selection. That was the Sorrow's vision of Outer Heaven and also the death side of the engine. But in order to achieve balance, he entrusted Snake with his mother's will, who represented life. The forces of the universe need to exist in harmony. If one side of the scale overtakes the other, the entire system falls apart. Ocelot knew that neither the Sorrow or the Joy's will was what was needed to be passed on. He understood that the perfect path of humanity was a combination of both sorrow and joy. In order to reach a point where all humans can coexist peacefully, the species needs to undergo trial by fire. You can't build a unified world without first learning how to correct a world full of conflict. Alright, that's going to do it for this one. Twitch, Twitter, and Discord links are on the screen and in the description. If you want to see more of the greatest Metal Gear content on the internet, make sure to support the channel on Patreon.
Alright, listen up. If you like this video, you need to reach in your pockets right now and give me a dog. I'm too nervous.
Let me try.
This is wrong. You're like participant outfit. You're complicit in your own money. That makes you an accomplice. I can't live without you. Also, you're gonna die tonight.
Do Al Pacino.
Give me a dog. So anyway, come that dog.
On every vacation at a verbal home, there's someone like you, who reunited the family to make up for lost time.
We meet at last.
You're from the Ocelot unit of specialists. It was a gruesome doing here.
Soldier.
He's the Ocelot commander.
We prefer private security providers, sir. Most Americans contracts do focus on security.
Yes, the security can be used.
There's a saying I like. One sword keeps another in the sheath. Sometimes the threat of violence alone is a deterrent. Sometimes by taking a life, others can be preserved. It's the code the samurai lived by.
A soldier and a philosopher. You are full of surprises, Mr. Lightning.
I can say the same about you, Mr. Prime Minister. What is happening?
Someone's blocking away the vehicle. Come on. with instructions on how to obtain a copy of the crime or traffic collision report from the Los Angeles Police Department. Please have paper and pencil ready, as you will be given the mailing address and necessary information in order to receive the requested report. Please be aware that this department retains reports for 10 years only. Requests for reports must be made by mail. Effective July 1st, 2022, the cost to receive a report from LAPD will be $16 for traffic reports and $24 for arrest and crime reports. This is a non-refundable searching fee. Please do not send cash. Payment is accepted in the form of check or money order payable to the LAPD. In your request, please provide the following information: the name of the victim or person making the report, along with the date and location of occurrence. If you're requesting a traffic collision report, please include the name of all parties involved, the date and location of occurrence, and if possible, include the vehicle license plate number. If you are an insurance company, please provide the plate number. If you are an attorney, please provide a signed release from your client. All requesters, please provide a stamped, self-addressed, legal-size envelope with your request. If you were the victim of a domestic violence incident, state law mandates that a copy of your report be provided to you at no cost. Please indicate this information in your request. Mail your request along with payment to the Los Angeles Police Department, Records and Identification Division, Post Office Box 30158, Los Angeles, California 90030. Request for process in the order received. We regret to report that due to personnel shortages, we currently have a 20 to 22-week delay in responding to your request for reports. We apologize for any inconvenience this has caused you and appreciate your support and understanding. Additionally, LAPD is partnered with LexisNexis to provide a secure online web that will allow the public involved in a collision, their attorneys, and insurance companies to obtain
Invalid entry. Please try again. Invalid entry. Please try again.
You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department. Para información en español, por favor, oprima el número 1. This message will provide you with instructions on how to obtain a copy of a crime or traffic collision report from the Los Angeles Police Department. Please have paper and pencil ready, as you will be given the mailing address and necessary information in order to receive the requested report. Please be aware that this department retains reports for 10 years only. Requests for reports must be made by mail. Effective July 1st, 2022, the cost to receive a report from LAPD will be $16 for traffic reports and $24 for arrest and crime reports. This is a non-refundable searching fee. Please do not send cash. Payment is accepted in the form of check or money order payable to the LAPD. In your request, please provide the following information: the name of the victim or person making the report, along with the date and location of occurrence. If you're requesting a traffic collision report, please include the name of all parties involved, the date and location of occurrence, and if possible, include the vehicle license plate number. If you are an insurance company, please provide the claim number.
press 1. Para español, primo 2. If you are calling from, please listen and choose one of the following menu options. For non-emergency police dispatch, press 1. For LAPD area community police stations, press 2. Please hold while your call is transferred to a police operator.
You have reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
Senor Jack.
What do you want with the Prime Minister?
I want him dead. Nothing first, of course.
We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
Business ain't been the same since they shut down SOP. Break from the war economy. Some of us like that economy. How's an honest warmonger supposed to make a living?
This is your answer.
Many police reports may be filed at lapdonline.org.
Don't do it.
On the homepage, click File a Police Report Online.
Don't worry,
Eligible online filings include harassing or annoying phone calls,
now block is
identity
still
theft,
useful.
lost property, vandalism, theft of vehicles, certain criteria must be met. We're sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible. You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator. We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible. Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report Online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicles, and a hit-and-run with no injury. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details. Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly. sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a hot volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible. You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department's non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator. We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible. Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft of vehicles, and a hit and run with no injuries. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details. Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly. We're sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible. You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department's non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator. We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible. Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft of vehicles, and a hit and run with no injuries. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details. Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly. Sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible. You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator. We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible. Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report Online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicles, and hit and run with no injuries. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details. Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
Renzoku Satsuchinjaiken. Then, following his graduation from college, he applied for a job at Konami's Osaka office.
You have reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
While grateful for the opportunity, he couldn't help but be disappointed. He was determined to make a name for himself. The MSX's technical limitations made that goal seem less attainable. His first project with the MSX team was a sequel to an action-adventure.
We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
Allowing it to stand out drastically from its predecessor. The first game was pretty bare bones, with players simply needing to dodge a few obstacles along some glaciers. But the sequel offered a plethora of changes, including power-ups, buried environments, and even alternate
Many police
endings
reports
depending
may
on
be
the player's
filed
performance.
online at lapdonline.org.
Konami
On the
was
homepage,
impressed.
click File a Police Report online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassment or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicles, and a hit and run with no injuries. Certain criteria must be met.
But when
Please
Kojima
see our
presented this
website for
overly
details.
ambitious design document to the executives at Konami, they rejected the changes and decided to redirect Kojima towards making a military combat title instead. Something that would be in the same vein as popular arcade shooters at the time like Capcom's Commando. Disheartened,
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
Was its inability to display more than 4 horizontal sprites at once, making the large battle sequences associated with games like Commando impossible. So, to circumvent this issue, he thought of a creative solution. The game would still have soldiers, but rather than feature non-stop open combat across a scrolling environment, why not give players a chance to avoid the combat altogether? He based this concept strongly around his love for the 1963 Sturgis film, The Great Escape.
We're sorry
where
for
a
this
band of
unusually
POWs
long
attempt to escape
delay.
from a Nazi
We are
prison
currently
camp during
experiencing a
World War
high
II.
volume of calls.
And he aimed to deliver
Please
that
remain on
same
the line,
tension of
and an
almost
operator
being
will be
caught
with you
into a
as
fully
quickly as
interactive
possible.
experience. By doing this, Kojima would be able to make even a single combative soldier on screen feel more intimidating than the dozens and other, more conventional shooter games at the time. Kojima then presented his design document to the executives at Konami, with the working title Metal Gear Intruder. But to his dismay, it too was rejected. They had asked
You've reached the
Kojima
Los
to deliver an
Angeles Police
exciting
Department
action
non-emergency
experience,
line.
and were concerned
All
that by
operators
forcing
are
players to
currently
constantly
assisting other
avoid
callers.
confrontation,
Please remain on the
Zero
line.
may
Your
kill
call
others
will be
deliberately,
answered by the next
would
available
appeal to Western
operator.
audiences. Kojima took his rejected design and reapproached the concept. He remained convinced that this new stealth action route was the way to go. But rather than have a game over screen appear when the player was caught, he incorporated a new alert phase, giving players a chance
We
to
appreciate your patience.
flee if they
All
wanted to.
operators are still assisting other
Alert phase
callers.
was likened to
Your
that
call
of
will be
Pac-Man,
answered
offering
as
a
soon as
first change up
possible.
to the pacing that would keep the player invested for longer. And because of this, Konami agreed to greenlight production of Kojima's directorial debut, Metal Gear. Development for Metal Gear was handled by a remarkably small team of programmers and artists, while Kojima handled the core
Many
game
police
design and
reports
writing.
may be filed
A trio of
online
programmers
at
are now here
lapdonline.org.
within the confines of
On the
slightly newer
homepage, click
MSX
File a
hardware
Police
to commit
Report
the game's
online.
ideas to code.
Reports eligible
This
for online
required them to piece
filing
together
include
detection
harassing
systems
or annoying phone
along
calls,
with enemy
identity
patrol that would
theft,
need to reset
lost
each
property,
refresh.
vandalism,
Meanwhile,
theft
a
or
pair of
theft
police
from
scripted
vehicle,
the pixelated
and a
flows
hit
of
and
Metal
run
Gear's
with no
industrial
injuries.
environment. Using
Certain
the limited
criteria
color
must be
palette
met.
of only 16
Please see our
colors,
website for
also
details.
ensuring each character and level design didn't come off too much like a childish cartoon. They generated hundreds of interconnected mazes, using simplistic geometric shapes and angled perspectives to help give the walls a perceivable depth. And then they worked with the programming team to balance out enemy patrol pathing.
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
Mizutani and his team in the Konami Square Rave Club formulated the game's sound effects and musical score, enhancing the action further with a dynamic soundtrack that would alter based on the enemy alert status. It was a bold step for video game sound design, as most titles during that time period just utilized a single audio track per level to save on memory. But it proved to be a critical component of Metal Gear's unique atmosphere. As these various development teams piece together the
We're
gameplay
sorry for
experience,
this
it did
unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible.
The but even this seemingly straightforward narrative was uncommon for its time, and would serve as a jumping-off point for one of gaming's most beloved stories. Finally, in the summer of 1987, after nearly a year of development, Konami released the original Metal Gear, exclusively for the MSX2 platform.
You have reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
Fearful that this growing threat may possess nuclear capabilities, an American Special Forces unit called Foxhound is sent in to investigate. But after the unit's most skilled field agent, Gray Fox, is captured, rookie soldier, Solid Snake, is sent in.
We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
Rookie Snake as they infiltrate Outer Heaven and search for clues pertaining to Gray Fox and Metal Gear's whereabouts. Along the way, players will encounter a number of obstacles, mainly enemy sentries, security devices, and a band of powerful mercenaries, each with their own special quirks.
Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report Online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicle, and a hit and run with no injuries. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details.
Even a hint of that within the confines of an action-adventure game was highly unusual. On top of that, the game's big twist and clever fourth wall breaking would set the scene for the franchise moving forward.
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
Metal Gear, at its core, is a stealth action-adventure, where sneaking past enemies whenever possible is encouraged. Most of the game is played from a semi-top-down perspective, and tasks players with navigating Snake through maze-like level environments while avoiding detection from patrolling enemies. If Snake wanders into an enemy's line of sight, then a red exclamation mark will appear over the alerted guard.
We're sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible.
However, if the player triggers a base-wide alarm, things get a bit more challenging, as enemy reinforcements will appear in greater numbers, and escaping to the next room won't necessarily help most of the time. Small enemies in Metal Gear deal some serious damage, enough that a direct confrontation with
You have reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
Tools and weapons collected throughout the course of their adventure. Upon deployment, Snake is armed with nothing more than a pack of cigarettes and a radio transmitter to communicate with a support team. But the player explores enough of the game world and is sure to backtrack and open previously locked doors.
We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
A mine detector to safely traverse minefields. And of course, the cardboard box that can be used to hide directly in plain sight, so long as the player remains still when using it. In addition to these items, players can also select between a few firearms.
Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report Online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicles, and a hit and run with no injuries. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details.
And most important of all, rations that can be eaten to replenish the player's health bar. Players can also increase their maximum health by locating a set number of POWs hidden throughout the game, incentivizing exploration even further. The entire experience was well.
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
With the stealth action that Silas Warner had attempted back in 1981. The end result is a game that, remarkably, over 34 years later, is still enjoyable to play today. The original Metal Gear was met with a decent amount of praise upon its release, with many holding it up as one of the must-play titles on the MSX2 platform. Though, a few, like the Games Machine, did point out that the visuals were lagging behind the competition a fair amount.
We're sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible.
Finally released his first game into the world, Kojima was eager to make something new, and entered into production on a Blade Runner-inspired graphic novel game soon after.
One of the most significant choices I made was to keep my name Bukhar as my artist name. The choice to commit to being 100% me.
You have reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
Konami looked at his past Metal Gear work and saw serious potential in bringing it over to Western audiences. The game was oozing with Western themes after all, from its Hollywood action-inspired hero to its more mature military-based elements. So, without Kojima and his programming team's knowledge,
all operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
In their Tokyo office, and then instructed them to create a port of the game within a tight 3-month window. Overwhelmed, this small 5-person team got to work retrofitting the game's visual and audio design to function within the confines of the Famicom's capabilities, and even redesigned
Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report Online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicle, and a hit and run with no injuries. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details.
However, this didn't matter to Western audiences. Up until this point, they had never even heard of Metal Gear before, and the game's unusual stealth action mechanics, coupled with its addictive formula, helped it to stand out tremendously. Metal Gear on the NES quickly became a hit.
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
They assigned another internal development team, many of whom had just come off working on the third Castlevania, and pushed them to incorporate even more action-based elements into the gameplay, convinced that the old Commando formula would be received better by its target Western audience. Kojima, still unaware that the Metal Gear property was being continued without him, finally learned of this supposed sequel when talking to one of the programmers involved. According to an interview between Kojima
We're sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible.
Being made, went home that evening and wrote up an entire design document for a true sequel to Metal Gear, and had it approved by Konami the following day. This was at the tail end of development for Snatcher, a project that had proven to be more difficult than he had initially anticipated. So much so that they were forced to abandon the last 2 acts of that game, leaving the story with
You have reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line.
Even so,
all operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
How they can improve upon that. But before this true sequel could ever see the light of day, Konami's NES team had completed work on their own project, and in the spring of 1990, they released Snake's
We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
Takes place 3 years after the events of the original game, with a new threat emerging from an unnamed nation in the Middle East. Snake, along with a small team of allies, are tasked with infiltrating a hostile military installation, where they soon discover that a line of mass-produced
Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report Online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicle, and a hit and run with no injuries. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details.
And even the ability to interrogate certain enemies for information. The successful interrogations contribute to the player's rank progression. Though, despite these few changes, Snake's Revenge didn't fare quite as well as his predecessor. Sales were much lower, likely due to the lack of the name Metal
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
Still, it did at least receive some praise from Hideo Kojima himself, It was said on multiple occasions that, while not canon with the core storyline, he still enjoyed Snake's revenge a great deal, and felt it properly utilized the characters he had introduced previously. But of course, it was the true Metal Gear sequel from Kojima's team that would inevitably steal the show, introducing a ton of fundamental changes to the gameplay formula that would transform.
We're sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible.
Eager to carry out his own vision, Kojima pitched a sequel to Konami that would be tailor-made for the MSX. And within the first month, Kojima and his team had entered into full production, updating the visual design and enhancing the many gameplay mechanics that Kojima had felt needed improvement. And then, following a brief delay in the late months of development to assist with a snatcher plot,
You have reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
4 years after the original game, with the world's dominant superpowers attempting full denuclearization in pursuit of peace and prosperity. But after a crude oil shortage thrust the world into economic turmoil, a rogue militant state in Asia called Zanzibar Land seizes
We
control of the
appreciate your
world's
patience.
nuclear arsenal
All
and
operators are
commits
still
attack
assisting other
biologists who
callers.
have been developing
Your
a
call
solution to
will be
the
answered
consequences
as
of
soon
war.
as possible.
With the world once again at the precipice of nuclear Armageddon, Snake is called out of retirement, this time serving under Foxhound's new commanding officer, Roy Campbell. The mission: infiltrate Zanzibar Land, rescue the Czech biologist being held captive, and disable
Many
the
police
enemy's
reports
nuclear
may be filed online
things
at
begin to strongly resemble the
lapdonline.org.
Metal Gear.
On the homepage,
Players
click
sneak around
File a
Metal Gear
Police
Fortress,
Report online.
search for keycards,
Reports
rescue
eligible for
people
online
using
filing
child
include
soldiers,
harassing
and
or annoying phone calls,
absurdly over-the-top
identity
process.
theft, lost property,
There's
vandalism,
also a fair amount of
theft or theft from
elements
vehicle,
incorporated into Metal Gear
and a
2's
hit and
narrative
run
that
with no
help it to
injuries.
stand out.
Certain criteria must be
Metal
met.
Gear 2 kicks off with a flashy cinematic intro cutscene, highly reminiscent of a Hollywood movie's intro sequence, something that was not at all common at that time. Additionally, there's more nuance to the characters themselves, especially Solid Snake, whose brooding, cynical personality is finally established thanks to the extended dialogue sequences he has with other characters. Other aspects introduced prior, like fourth wall breaking gameplay elements involving using the game's manual to decrypt secret codes, also make a return, perpetuating a trend that would soon become expected of the series. But one of Metal Gear 2's most important contributions, at least in regards to its story, is the major plot twist at the end, revealing the truth about Snake's origin and transforming the narrative from its cliché good versus evil into something a bit more complex. Coincidentally, in the exact same way that George Lucas's Empire Strikes Back had transformed the meaning of the original Star Wars only 10 years earlier. Meanwhile, Metal Gear 2's gameplay also features quite the overhaul, so much so that it would serve as the fundamental blueprint for the series moving forward. The general premise of the game remains the same as before. Players start with nothing but a pack of smokes, and need to sneak around enemies and acquire gear as they search for clues to help complete their mission. But now, players can make use of an on-screen radar to navigate through enemy territory more easily. The player appears as a blinking red dot in the center grid space that represents the current room shown on screen, while enemy soldiers appear as blinking white dots that can now be tracked even when they're in an adjacent room off-screen. This change allows players to see ahead of time whether they're going to run into an enemy when moving through a doorway, and also enables enemies to travel from room to room as well, which, along with their new cones of vision, makes use of the radar paramount to avoid detection. To help balance out this powerful tool further, enemy alert phases will automatically jam the radar, showing only the alert level and time remaining before it resets. If the player manages to escape the enemy's view for long enough, an evasion phase will begin, indicating that enemies are now searching the area. This adds a great new dimension to the game's stealth action, letting players essentially play hide-and-seek with the enemy, and Snake's new crouch and crawling maneuvers only add to this further. But crawling isn't only used to squeeze underneath small spaces. Players can also use this new ability to minimize the amount of sound they produce, as enemies can now hear the player when walking on certain noisy surfaces. Other changes include a more consistent visual style, removing the awkward 2D elevator screens from before, a redesign to the way card keys work, simplifying the process of opening doors in the late stages of the game, new ration types, each restoring varying amounts of health, and a number of new tools and gadgets like grenades, a Stinger missile launcher, night vision goggles, and a usable hiding place that's somehow even more absurd than Snake's signature cardboard box. Metal Gear 2's many improvements served to greatly evolve the Metal Gear series, though its contributions went largely unnoticed due to the game's limited distribution. Within the Japanese market, Metal Gear 2 was met with high critical acclaim. It was praised for its excellent storytelling, along with its much cleaner execution of its gameplay elements, with only minor complaints being directed towards its frequent reliance on backtracking. When the game finally did manage to receive a US port, it retroactively received unanimous praise from collectors and reviewers alike, 15 some years after its release. But long before players became aware of its existence, Metal Gear 2 would lay the groundwork for one of the most popular and influential video games in the history of the medium.
If you had told me in 2018 that I could get grass delivered to my house in under an hour, I'd say you were smoking something.
Following the partial success of Metal Gear 2, Kojima once more stepped away from his magnum opus, hoping to diversify his portfolio with titles outside of the Metal Gear universe. And because both versions of the Metal Gear sequel had underperformed, Konami no longer felt it necessary to invest in another in-house sequel, giving Kojima the chance to continue the story when he felt the time was right. During this hiatus, Kojima and his development team spent the early 90s working on a point-and-click adventure game, a very Western 1980s version, with social commentary regarding anti-Asian sentiment born of films like Kaufman's Rising Sun. This project, titled Police Knots, would mark a distinct shift in creative control towards Kojima, whose storytelling capabilities he felt had been significantly limited by his lack of prior programming experience. With the help of a scripting engine he designed, he was now able to directly manipulate the game's musical cues and animations as he saw fit. He finally felt in control of his vision, and the resulting game was met with glowing reception within its limited Japanese release. Following this initial launch, Kojima's production team spent the course of the next year porting the title over to the CD-ROM-based 3DO interactive multiplayer console. The 3DO was initially marketed as the next big step for the console gaming space, with high-end graphics previously only achievable on PCs. Eager to take advantage of this, Kojima decided to take the Metal Gear series back out of retirement, and began to jot down ideas for a Metal Gear 3. But 3DO inevitably failed to live up to its lofty expectations, and was quickly edged out only a year later by Sony's groundbreaking PlayStation. Because of this, Metal Gear 3 was redirected to target a PlayStation release instead, and full production on the project began in the early months of 1995. Meanwhile, it's important to note that Konami was also evolving around this time frame. With the continued growth of its software development assets, Konami's corporate offices decided to set up a divisional organization, with several regional subsidiaries, each responsible for their own specialized intellectual properties. The studio in Tokyo, for example, became Konami Computer Entertainment Tokyo, and had begun working on the survival horror series Silent Hill. The old Osaka office became Konami Computer Entertainment Osaka, and Kojima's team, previously known as Osaka Development Division No. 5, were transferred to a separate office in Tokyo, and were subsequently renamed into Konami Computer Entertainment Japan. With this studio refresh, Kojima's development team nearly tripled in size, with roughly 30-some developers and multiple units all responsible for different aspects of the game's design. Most notably, illustrator and lead graphic artist Yoji Shinkawa, who helped to reinvent the design of Metal Gear's iconic characters, with striking conceptual designs that have since become synonymous with the Metal Gear property. With Yoji's help, the programming and graphic design team were able to more properly realize Kojima's vision, and began to sculpt models with a level of visual fidelity that was simply unheard of at the time. Snake, for example, was made up of nearly 700 polygons. That's more than double the amount of polygons used by Core's Lara Croft in the first several Tomb Raider games. Then, add on top of that the phenomenal camera work, smart use of motion blur, and unprecedented cinematic presentation, and it's easy to see why Metal Gear Solid was primed to dominate the gaming space. But it wasn't without its technical hurdles. When deciding on how to properly realize this game's 3D atmosphere, the goal initially was to have the game be played from a first-person perspective. delivering the most realistic experiences possible. But Kojima shot down the idea, stating that the first-person games in the market weren't smooth enough, and would make most gamers nauseous. He did still love the idea of being able to view the world from Snake's eyes, though, and agreed to incorporate an optional first-person view button, usable only when standing still. The rest of the game would be rendered from a more traditional top-down perspective that would smoothly transition whenever the player wanted to peek around corners or crawl into a tight space. To help dial in these many camera angles, Kojima and assistant director Yoshikazu Matsuhana recreated the game's level environments using Lego bricks, and would pan a small camera across the build until they identified the proper camera distances for each corner. As these game environments started to come together, programmers and artists worked collaboratively to create the most realistic stealth action experience possible. Kojima was adamant that the game be true to life, and even had a research team flown out to meet with the Huntington Beach SWAT team in California for consultation on modern-day firearms and military vehicles. As development entered its second year, the game started to enter a playable state. Early builds of the game focused on an exterior helipad that was seamlessly connected to an interior tank hangar. A lot of work went into fine-tuning the core gameplay mechanics here, including what the player would be capable of and how the enemies would react. Once the game logic was locked down, steady progress was made in expanding the scope of the environment, allowing the nuclear warhead storage building and initial dock area to finally take shape. Finally, after 3 years of heightened anticipation, the project was complete, and Konami Computer Entertainment Japan released the third mainline entry to the series, Metal Gear Solid, exclusively for the Sony PlayStation. Metal Gear Solid kicks off 6 years after the events of Metal Gear 2, with Solid Snake being called out of retirement once again to help prevent a nuclear catastrophe. Foxhound, now controlled by series newcomer Liquid Snake and his army of genome soldiers, have rebelled against the United States government and have taken control of a nuclear disposal facility in Alaska called Shadow Moses. Their demands, the remains of the legendary soldier Big Boss, the lead antagonist for the past 2 titles. Refusing to give in to these demands, the U.S. pressures Roy Campbell to put together an infiltration team consisting of field operative Solid Snake, geneticist Naomi Hunter, data analyst Mei Ling, and returning survival consultant from Metal Gear 2, Master Miller. Their mission? To infiltrate Shadow Moses Island, rescue 2 high-profile hostages, and confirm whether or not the insurrectionists possess the capabilities to launch a nuclear strike. Right from the get-go, Metal Gear Solid demonstrates a massive shift towards a more properly realized cinematic presentation. Key parts of the narrative are now highlighted with high-quality cutscenes, with varying camera angles and cuts incorporated to mimic a major motion picture film. Characters were fully voiced for the first time, with the most notable performance coming from a 28-year-old David Hayter.
There are no heroes in war. All the heroes I know are either dead or in prison, one or the other.
But Snake, you're a hero, aren't you? Los Angeles Police Department, non-emergency number. If this is an
Hayter
emergency,
initially
please
auditioned for the
hang
role
up
of
and
Solid
dial
Snake using his own
911.
natural speaking voice,
For English,
securing the
press
part.
1.
But after reading
Para
over the script and
español,
learning of
oprima
Snake's long and painful
If
history,
you are calling
he
from
decided
a
to
road
inject
trip,
more
please
bitterness
listen
and
and
contempt
choose
into
one
the
of the following
performance,
menu options.
ultimately
For
redefining the
non-emergency,
character and
please
solidifying
hold while your
himself
call is
as one of the most
transferred. Please
beloved
operate.
iconic voices in video game history. Adding to this is Metal Gear Solid's unforgettable musical score that seamlessly blends calm,
You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department's non-emergency line.
action
All
pieces.
operators are currently instructing other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
Then, of course, there's the gameplay. Metal Gear Solid builds off of the previously established concepts and reworks them to function within the confines of a rendered 3D space. Sneaking past cars,
We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
Verticality literally adds a new dimension to it, with players able to climb up ladders, navigate through air vents, press their backs up against walls to beat their opponents. But this increased freedom is shared with the enemy as well. Repeatable spotting Snake.
Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report Online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicle, and a hit and run with no injury. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details.
expect. Flipping it is left in the snow, or hiding in a cardboard box that belongs in a different building. Simply put, these soldiers weren't quite as easy to fool.
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
Snake just has to get his hands dirty. The Metal Gear Solid features lots of new combat mechanics too. Hand-to-hand combat is now built around a 3-hit combo attack, with 2 punches and a kick capable of knocking an enemy onto their back. And if a player lands 2 of these combos, they may temporarily stun the enemy without permanently killing them. Alternatively, players can quickly flip an enemy over their back, or grab them and use them as a human shield.
We're sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible.
Firing a more realistic velocity, making the full loss a more practical weapon in combat encounters than a whole lot of weapons over the past. Metal Gear Solid also introduces the semi-automatic PSG sniper rifle that, like the Stinger missile launcher, is locked to a first-person view.
You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department's non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
It can be used to disable a number of electrical devices around shadows society. Outside of that, Metal Gear is remarkably very much the same as Metal Gear 2. In fact, some argue that it's practically a remake. There's the
We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other calls. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
Messages are encoded.
Just call me Deep Throat.
Boss battles with tanks and helicopters, blowing open walls with explosives, trapdoors, invisible enemies that appear alongside Snake and an elevator, pretty much everything. And this won't be the last instance.
Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the home page, click File a Police Report Online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, for theft of vehicles, and hit and run misdemeanors. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details.
Music, acting, graphics, and style action, people. It was a little overwhelming. And thanks to brilliant marketing campaigns like Pizza Hut's Pizza Power giveaway, over 12 gamers were able to try out Metal Gear Solid's within the hour.
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
Almost $52 million in revenue in the first 12 months, far exceeding expectations from Konami and its developers. Accompanying these incredible sales numbers was a sea of glowing reviews. For some, like IGN, claiming it to be as close to perfection as possible. The game was praised primarily for its gorgeous visual direction, along with its outstanding story and character design that transcended industry norms.
We're sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible.
Its short length and its simplicity. Regardless, Metal Gear Solid is considered by most to be a masterpiece. This has won countless awards for its highly innovative design, and continues to influence the design of video games today. The developers, decades later, still trying to emulate the feel of cinematic storytelling. What's more, Metal Gear Solid had finally
You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other callers. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
Soon after Metal Gear Solid's release, Konami Computer Entertainment Japan worked on creating an updated version of the game for Japanese audiences called Metal Gear Solid Integral. This version includes a number
We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other callers. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
New gameplay modes and scales to add replay value, and a separate disc titled Metal Gear Solid VR Missions, expanding the previously included bonus content with up to 300 playable stages. Special teaser for a planned Playboy sequel.
Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the home page, click File a Police Report Online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicles, and an hit-and-run with no injuries. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for details.
At the cusp of the new millennium, Metal Gear Solid shared a mutually beneficial relationship with the PlayStation platform, boosting its popularity while simultaneously skyrocketing console sales. And this partnership will continue with Kojima's vision of the series' future.
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you shortly.
Looking to deliver a something different. But with the overwhelming success of his PlayStation debut, he found he couldn't the sequel became the lead focus for him and his studio soon after. Then, as they were studying the newly acquired PlayStation 2 development kits, a request came in from Konami's parent offices for a Game Boy Color entry to the series. Kojima,
We're sorry for this unusually long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible.
And lead director Shita Nojiri to assist, along with a handful of other support staff at various stages of development. The goal for this project was to translate the newer Metal Gear Solid experience into something that kids could play portably in the schoolyard. The Game Boy Color was tailored more towards children after all, so a lot of thought went into making the game more kid-friendly.
You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department's non-emergency line.
This resulted
All
in some
operators
fairly
are
bizarre
currently assisting other callers.
that Kojima
Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operators.
Though, thanks to the efforts of Nakamura, the graphical design still managed to portray the world of Metal Gear in a faithful, realistic way, with complex sprite animation work that far surpassed other Game Boy titles at the time. It took a relatively long time to complete.
We appreciate your patience. All operators are still assisting other calls. Your call will be answered as soon as possible.
Available to Japanese gamers, with European and American releases following only a week later. Ghost Babel is another entry to the series that is not considered to be canon to the main Metal Gear storyline. The story kicks off 7 years after the original Metal Gear game, with the theft of a U.S.
Many police reports may be filed online at lapdonline.org. On the homepage, click File a Police Report online. Reports eligible for online filing include harassing or annoying phone calls, identity theft, lost property, vandalism, theft or theft from vehicle, and a hit-and-run with no injury. Certain criteria must be met. Please see our website for
Takes down
details.
a new type of Metal Gear mech. Though the inclusion of a number of brand new support characters and this attempted explanation for Big Boss's rebellion in the original game does part with the series' eventual canonical events. And today, it feels more like a fan fiction within the collection.
Our operators are working as quickly as possible to answer your call. Please continue to hold. We will be with you
Feels like a
shortly.
hybrid of the original top-down titles and the newer, far more successful Metal Gear Solid. Because the visuals rely on pixel art once more, the camera puts it into only a top-down perspective. Snake's abilities have been refined, allowing him to travel diagonally and hug walls just like on the PlayStation. Another big change is how the game is split up into separate stages, with the player being given a score based on the completion time and the number of
We're sorry for this long delay. We are currently experiencing a high volume of calls. Please remain on the line, and an operator will be with you as quickly as possible.
It's a confident entry to the series through and through, especially in how it tackles the gameplay's obvious technical limitations. And the result was a solid critical reception. Many reviewers awarded the game perfect scores across the board, commenting on the game's ambitious narrative and smart incorporation of Metal Gear's signature mechanics. Others noted Ghost Babel's clever system like
You have reached the Los Angeles Police Department's non-emergency line. All operators are currently assisting other calls. Please remain on the line. Your call will be answered by the next available operator.
Successful game in its own right. It would understandably be the next mainline entry, with the core fan base was most excited.
Magic Eraser. It's a game changer.
We appreciate your patience.
I use my
All
finger
operators
for
are still
seconds like
assisting
the
other
erase.
callers. Your call will be answered
My name
as
is
soon
Jesse.
as possible.
Back in the fall of 1998, Konami Computer Entertainment in Japan saw a rapid growth to both its staff size and its available funding. Metal Gear Solid was primed to be a hit, and Konami knew that fans would expect a more ambitious sequel from the studio responsible.
Good afternoon, Alex.
Began to reorganize their
Hello.
base subsidiaries.
Hello.
Hi. I have an update on my robbery case.
Okay, where did this robbery occur? I'm trying to figure out which detectives actually handling this case. Because right now you're actually calling with the call center. So, where did this occur?
It happened on, let's see, the Broadway bar.
The Broadway bar, so that would be in Central Division, right? So you're trying to get a hold of the detective, or did you already file a police report?
Yeah, so I talked to the police yesterday, and I got they tried to use my credit card at a store, so maybe I have the time that they tried to use it. Maybe they can get some video footage or something. I don't know.
Oh, this is an identity theft, right? Not a robbery.
No. They put a gun to my head and robbed me, but they took my cards and my phone. Yeah.
And you have updated information on that?
Yeah, they tried to use my card at the burger factory.
Oh, I see. Let me give you the number to detectives over at Central Station.
All right.
That way they can see who is actually handling this case so far at the moment. Let me know when you're ready.
All right. Let's see. All right. Yeah.
So this number is the LAPD Central Division Detectives. And the number is 213-833.
213-833.
3750.
3750. That's 913-833-3750.
Correct. It's 213-833-3750.
Okay.
Yeah, just give them a call and ask to speak with one of the detectives handling your robbery case. That way you can provide that information.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Okay. All right, sure. Sounds good. Bye-bye.
All right.
You have reached a voicemail box. Start recording at the tone. When finished, press the pound key.
Hello, this is Emmanuel Wright. You can call me back at 707-759-8794. Thank you. Oh, I have an update on my case.
A voicemail box. Start recording at the tone. When finished, press the pound key.
That much.
Hey, this is Emmanuel calling back.
Hey, how's it going, sir?
Hey, so I got the officers' names. It's Rawbells and Valencia.
The detective's name, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, and did you speak with him?
No, nobody answered the phone. I'm just looking at my paperwork right now.
Okay, what's the, is there a badge number or serial number there by chance that he provided you?
Yeah, so it's 44793.
44793.
Yeah.
And what was the name?
Rawbells?
Okay, so that's the officer that responded out there and took the report for you. The question is, which detective's handling your case at the moment? So initially what happens is when these officers go out there to the location of where this took place, they'll take a report for you, they go back to the station, they complete the report, and then it gets forwarded to detectives who are now the investigating officers in this case. If nobody answers that number, try the front desk. When you get a hold of someone at the front desk, ask to be transferred to someone in robbery detectives. And let me give you that number to the front desk. It's going to be 213-486-6606.
Alright. Cool. Thanks, man. You still there? Hi, I was calling to give my detective like updated information about a robbery that happened on Sunday morning.
At this hotel?
Oh, wait. This isn't the police?
No.
Oh. Oh, they said this is the number for the detectives. Okay.
This is the resort in Traverse City, Michigan.
Oh. Alright. Well, thanks.
Have a good one.
Alright, bye.
You've reached the Los Angeles Police Department Central Division. If this is an emergency, please hang up and dial 911. Para continuar en español, oprima el número 1. We are located at 251 East 6th Street in Los Angeles. The hours of operation for front desk services are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. We are closed on Sunday. Please listen carefully to the following options before making a selection. If you need a police officer to respond to a location and it is not a 911 emergency, please hang up and dial area code 877-ASK-LAPD. That number is area code 877-275-5273, or press 2 and your call will be transferred. If you need to order a copy of a police report, please press 3 for the Records and Identification Division, or hang up and call area code 213-486-8130. If you need a Los Angeles City telephone number for other than police services, please press 4 or hang up and dial 311. If you need the Detective Division regarding a criminal investigation or vehicle impound during their normal business hours from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, press 5. If you need...
You have reached a voicemail box. Start recording at the tone. When finished, press the pound key.
Hello, this is Emmanuel Wright. You can call me back at 707-759-8794. I'm calling for some extra info on a robbery that happened on Sunday. Alright.
soon. Noobsaibot. They wait.